Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you are too arrogant. If you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power, and I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that I'm God.
Welcome again to Street Talk. My name is Ahmad Shakaraki, and on Street Talk, what we do, we talk about things happening here in Michigan, the U.S., and abroad. Political, social, and economics. Joining me tonight,
Dennis Burnside.
Paget Maynard.
We got a lot to cover, so let's start. Let's just start with a thing that that the courts kind of got me thinking today with this business getting all the lights, water, all these other things, but the man who running the business decides, well, I'm not going to do this for these people, and
because they're gay.
And you were saying that if he don't do it for these gay, somewhere down the line, he could say, I'm not going to do it for them black people.
Any group. I say it all the time, and I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say it again. People don't read the history, or they forget the history. Because in some cases, we have to remember this. The Warren Court said in the 60s that you don't have the right to discriminate based on race because it impedes on interstate commerce. Now that was a legal fiction. It was a way of them saying you can't discriminate based on race or other factors because it interferes with the ability of goods and services and the economy to function when people can't freely move about the country. When the real reason was a moral reason. It's just not right to discriminate based on race. Now, that's been in place for around 55 years or so. So now you've got a situation where the Supreme Court just cracked open that door and they said, yeah, you can discriminate. You can say to a particular group, in this case, gay men, that if it violates your religious beliefs, that you don't have to provide them the same services you provide any other group that comes in your door. Okay, and there's going to be a lot of people who say that's fine. I think that's great. We shouldn't have to have our religious beliefs violated because homosexual couples want to come in and buy a cake. Okay, but remember, the same rationale that's being used now against that gay couple is the same rationale that was used against you to prevent you from going in that restaurant or that cake shop or that hotel. And it's now the door's open. They can do it again. And you're going to have a hard time making a moral argument, an ethical argument, when you were saying it's okay to have their ox get gored, but I don't want my ox gored. You have to be consistent. And if it's moral, it's moral, and if it's not, it's not. But my bigger problem is I don't want to say to anybody that I concur with your ability to discriminate because of your religious beliefs, because your religious beliefs are irrelevant to interstate commerce, and they're also justified. They've also justified all kind of horrific events here in the United States, from mass murder, genocide of the Native Americans, to murder, rape, enslavement, kidnapping, split up the family of Africans. We could go on down the line. Jim Crow. It was all justified by the Christian right, all justified by the Bible, just like this is. So black folks who say that this is a good a decision by the court, just be aware you're next.
Well, blacks and other minority people have to worry about that, because if they're saying this now, I mean, how about 5 or 6 years down the line, they might say, well, this black may rob me when he come in. So how about that, Patrick?
What's up? Those who claim that the Bible gives them the right to do this, they need to go back and read it properly.
Okay.
So they don't have no moral right to do that.
Okay.
Now, I will concede, I agree with you, Dennis, Ahmad, that if they are allowed to do this now, it can spread out.
Yeah.
And they will feel, hey, I got it against gay men. We're going after the gay women next, lesbians.
Yeah.
And the whole LGBT whatever.
Yeah.
And then it goes to everybody else. Now, where I'm coming from is, if you don't want me in your business place, then I don't have to come and fight you to spend my money with you. Because there are other places I can go.
Right.
Unfortunately, and Dennis, you were mentioning some of this in the break, that we as a people, blacks, right here in this country, have had lots and lots of business going on. Banking, transportation, and all kinds of things. And for whatever reason, we allow that to get away from us.
Well,
and have to depend now on somebody else. And when you start depending so wholly on somebody else who doesn't care about you,
right.
then they can throw anything in your face.
Right. Well,
as we would say back in the old country, they'll stick hot potato in your hand.
Yeah. Well, that's our, that's one of the problems right now. Because I don't want to come up with, but 50 years ago, the insurance man lived over here. Guy digging ditches lived next door to him. Doctor lived over here, and lady who's a nurse. I mean, but this was our neighborhood. They all gone,
but there's a bigger picture. I hear you saying that we had a community that involved all of us, and I remember the same thing, man.
Community.
The black community would have a pharmacist living next door, to factory worker living next door to a unemployed alcoholic living next door to a janitor living next door to a small business owner, because the ability of people to move into neighborhoods and buy houses that reflect their economic ability was attenuated. You did not have the opportunity to buy a bigger, better house. Irrespective of who your neighbors were, you were redlined into certain areas and your options were limited. And if we bring back this Jim Crow system as it existed in the past, as the door's been open as of this morning, the ability of you and me to travel freely about the country is going to be compromised. And with that, our ability to make money to justify moving around the country is going to be justified. And we'll find ourselves back in the same position we were then, where even though we had the Negro Leagues, even though we had black cabs, we had black movie theaters, we had black pharmacies, we had black medical practices, all wonderful. But they were all doing it at a level of just a pitiful economic development, and any time it started to thrive, you see what you saw like in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So let's not make this sound glorious and sell it in a way that doesn't reflect what actually went on in the past. we were economically attenuated and breaking free of the bonds of discrimination, racial discrimination in terms of housing, jobs, accommodations, are one of the reasons why people who had the ability to go out there and make money were able to go out there and do it. So I don't necessarily think that reinstating Jim Crow is a good thing unless it's on our terms, unless we have the freedom to live where we want to and do business where we want, but we choose to do business with each other and we choose to live among ourselves. Well, that's a different story.
Malcolm X said, he said that he didn't want, didn't want anybody to give us anything, but just open the doors,
But the doors got to be open.
Right.
That's all.
Right. You were saying, Patrick?
Did the Supreme Court open the door in that cake case?
Yeah.
What door did they open?
Open to say that you could be discriminated against based on you being a member of a group.
Okay. So where does that leave us today?
It leaves us in peril.
Are we now able to say, well, hey, I don't have to make an effort to do anything because the court says, because now, remember then it's the law now that you can't do it. You remember that Hobby Lobby case with birth control?
Yeah.
Didn't the case go in their favor?
In whose favor?
Hobby Lobby.
As I recall, no.
It didn't?
As I recall, no. Because what they were trying to do is limit women's ability to buy birth control pills on their medical plan through Hobby Lobby.
On their medical plan.
Right.
And I'm not sure. I didn't.
But why is that relevant?
It seemed as though they came by.
What's the reason why you ask?
Well, the court made the decisions.
All right.
So this one, and therefore this other one, which is following which, and how far is it going to go? Now, if I'm going to say, well, the Supreme Court is supreme, whatever they decide, that's the law of the land, we'll have to say the law of the land is the man has the right to discriminate against you, not serving you because of who you are.
That's manifestly true, so
that's the law.
And that means you're fine with it. Is that what you're saying?
That, no.
Well, I'm asking, that's the law,
it's the law, but hey, there's some laws that are made to be broken.
Well,
Patrick, I guess what I'm saying is, don't you see the peril for you individually if this law is allowed to stand?
Then I told you I
okay,
got you.
so
I'm
if that's
you.
the case,
and now you see there's some things that you can look at from a biblical standpoint.
Why would I look at it from a biblical standpoint?
Huh?
Why would I look at it from a biblical standpoint? What's that got to do with the law? The Bible says a lot of things. The Bible said I should be an obedient slave and obey my master. The Bible says that. The Bible said, yes, it does.
Context.
I have these, and I have a very good reading ability, and I know how to comprehend. No context.
Just pull out something and
amen. Leviticus will say in one line that you should not wear a shirt comprised of two different fabrics. If you do, you go into hell. Now, what context is that? Leviticus. It says this about the mixed cloth, and if your child talks back to you, you can kill them, and all kind of horrendous stuff. I don't know what context I need to read that in to justify that being something I need to adhere to. So the fact that it's in the Bible is meaningless to me. I'm talking about the law, and I know that it's happened now, and now that it's happened, we should anticipate, like I was saying in the first segment. You're going to have the National Review, you're going to have the Heritage Foundation, you're going to have all these right-wing think tanks, and that's going to be bolstered by Fox News, Breitbart. All these right-wingers are going to start to say, why do I have to serve them if I don't want to? You pick the group. Why do I have to serve them? We already have this precedent set by Uncle Thomas and them on June 4th, 2018. Mm-hmm. They don't have to serve gays wedding cakes. Yeah. Why do I have to serve black folks in my restaurant? Why do I have to let Jews come in and stay in my motel? Why do I have to let Asians come here and eat in my restaurant? Mm-hmm. That's what's next.
And already, man, some of those people who work with Trump, man, already, and look at the senator, congressman from Kentucky. You know, he said that businesses should be able, restaurants should be able to turn away the people that they don't want to serve.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the next logical step.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Okay.
take Einstein to figure this
Yeah.
out.
Dennis,
Yes.
my question then.
Sure.
What is the answer to this? What is the solution to this problem? This is the Supreme Court saying this. This is the law. We know morally it's wrong. We had come from that already, so it's like turning back the clock. What is the solution now?
Well, first you have to evaluate how we got in this position. And the way we got in this position is we have an illegitimate president who had an illegitimate selection of an illegitimate Supreme Court justice who should not even be on the court. We had a legitimately elected by the majority of the American people bring forth a legitimately qualified Supreme Court justice candidate who could not even get a hearing because Mitch McConnell said, I won't hold hearings. And he held it for almost 2 years until Agent Orange, the Russian asset, Donald Trump, became president, in quotation marks. And then he foisted upon us as another right-wing reactionary. I don't even want to say his name. But this Neil jerk, and I'd call him a different name if I wasn't here, was one of the key votes that says, yeah, it's okay to discriminate based on race. And of course, you could always rely on the reliably coonish Uncle Tom, Clarence Thomas, to go along with this. So yeah, what do we have going forward? We have a long fight against us because the discrimination is going to get worse instead of better over the next decades. Like Ahmad said in the first show, it's only been about 50 years since we finally had the right to move about the country freely, and now that's being attenuated, and it's on the way back the other way.
So what are we going to do about it?
What are we going to
How
do about it?
could
We're going
we
to do the
resolve
same.
it?
We're going to do the same thing we always did. We're going to fight. We're going to bring forward cases. We're going to appeal to people's morality. We're going to go to the Supreme Court with a different president, a different Supreme Court, and say that this is not legal, based on the precedent set by the Warren Court when they talked about interstate commerce. We're going to fight it. But in the meantime, until that day comes, we've just opened up, I shouldn't say we, people who agree with that type of thing have just opened up the door for blatant and rampant discrimination
In
against
other
groups.
words, then, you're going to ask the Supreme Court then to come
Well,
to reverse what this one said.
Just like they just did today. Exactly.
yeah.
The Supreme Court today just reversed 55 years of law. They said you can't discriminate based on race, sex, gender, la-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Well, they just said today, yes, you can. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is bring another case forward and say, no, you can't. And hopefully by then, Clarence Thomas will be picking cotton in heaven. And a couple other will be down there with Scalia in hell. And we can have some more reasonable human beings on the Supreme Court, nominated by a reasonable president, and have laws that are reasonable for the majority of the people of the country. That's what's going to happen, Patrick.
And we won't have a president who thinks he's a king.
Right. Who's illegitimate.
Who really thinks he's a king,
Well, I guess El Trumpo thinks he is monarch of all he surveys. His right, there is none to dispute.
I mean,
You would think he said that?
it's just, man, it's just mind-boggling, really, man. For you look at all the presidents who's been, and he comes along and he thinks that he's thinks that he's over everything. I mean, it's just really mind-boggling, man. And the way he got elected,
Well, what he knows it can fill up a thimble. I honestly think a lot of the things he says that he wants to do, he honestly thought the president could just mandate it.
Yeah.
And he found out there's checks and balances, there's other things that are impediments to his desires, and it frustrates him. He actually thought he could come in and have the Justice Department investigate people he wanted them to investigate and stop
forget
investigating
he said
people he
it's
didn't want to.
just-
He actually thought he could just come in and call that kind of shot.
Yeah. And the thing about it,
And they're letting him think that in a lot of cases too.
37, between 36 and 39%, man, who went out there and voted for him, they just dumb, man. Don't anything that the right wing will say, they go along with it.
Well, I think it goes beyond that. I think it's more sinister than just being dumb. I really do. If you look back at the election, and of course you have to put an asterisk by it because we know that the Russians changed votes and they changed tabulations and they changed the perception of people going into the election about what Hillary was all about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But throw that away. After the election was over and you polled people and you asked them what the overriding reason was for Trump, the overriding reason wasn't economic anxiety.
No.
The overriding reason was racial bias,
Yeah.
the racial prejudice, racism. They voted for Trump because they saw the future when white folks weren't dominant and in control, coming faster than they wanted it to, and they saw Trump as the wall to prevent that from happening.
Do you know that, I think earlier, Ahmad, you were talking about the primaries going on this week, tomorrow.
Yeah, California and New
do
Jersey.
Do you know that for the first time you have so many openly stating that they are white supremacists in thing, who are now running.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got a Nazi. You got two Nazis running.
Oh yeah.
Who opened the door for him?
Yeah.
You tell us.
Agent Orange.
Yeah, because now.
Twitterlini.
Yeah, because now they see, hey, we can get elected now. But do you know that in all the armed forces now, they got a certain percentage, man, of these Nazis and the white supremacists and all these in them now.
In the police forces too.
Police forces.
Yeah, New York Times did that almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They said that there's been a gradual infiltration of police departments all across the country, sheriff department and police departments and the armed forces of avowed white supremacists.
Yeah.
Hey man, there's an article in today's Washington Post that talks about the peril that Donald Trump brings on a civil war. This ain't speculation, man. I'm telling people we running too fast to a crisis point.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about constitutional crisis. We're running fast towards that. We're also running fast towards a crisis of violence because there's too many AR-15s and M16s and grenades being bought by these good old boys, and they itching to shoot them.
Oh, yeah.
And man, all it's going to take is Trump to give the nod, and they're going to be out here picking us off.
You know.
So we better be ready.
Yeah, and the thing is man, if you look at a lot of these states, you know, a lot of these states has got a whole bunch of these different groups in them. Michigan is one of them.
Oh, big time.
You know, Michigan, Wisconsin. You know, you look at some of these states and but yeah, you know, and don't go to the Northwest. You know, Idaho and, you know, places like that. Hey, man, you know, so, and they're just buying these guns, I mean, fast as, you know, anytime anybody says, we going to do that, this is about gun, you get a rush. You know, right now, I'll bet you after every one of these shootings, the gun stores be full.
Sales always pop up. Yes,
yeah. So you know, I mean, it's like these people, like you said, we're just waiting for Trump to give the word.
And you know, now that we're on the gun, just real briefly, the Second Amendment. People need to understand that from the time the country came into being until 2006, I believe it was, the United States Supreme Court never interpreted the Second Amendment as saying that you have an unsaleable individual right to own any type of firearm you want.
No.
They always said that it's up to the states to regulate it, and you regulate it to the extent that you want to, because what the Second Amendment actually says is that a well-regulated militia is being necessary to remain a free state. The rights of an individual to keep and bear arms should not be abridged. But they always take out that first part, and they focus on the second part, and that has not been the way the Constitution was interpreted until just not even 10 years ago. But people think that this madness about buying any type of gun you want is the way it's always been. It's what the Founding Fathers intended. I say, okay, well, let me go out and buy me a rocket launcher. Let me have a missile that'll shoot down planes. Let me set up the perimeter of my yard so anytime somebody comes in and I don't like them, I just have some type of gun or claymore mine pop up.
Yeah.
It's the Second Amendment.
yeah.
I don't have any rights that can be
Yeah,
abridged.
yeah.
You know, so you see these people who don't know their history,
No.
haven't bothered to read it, don't want to know it, being manipulated by the NRA, which is nothing but a pimp
That's
for
all.
the gun
Yeah,
manufacturers. And the gun manufacturers look at those children being bloodied up and murdered in schools and playgrounds
Yeah.
and innocent people at concerts, and they say, you know what? That's a small price to pay
Yeah.
for me to hit my number next quarter and increase my profits.
Yeah.
That's what it's really all
Yeah.
about.
And the
It's
thing-
sinister.
Yeah.
It's absolutely sinister.
Good. You were saying, Patrick.
Well, I wanted to switch to something else. Back a little, we talk about these Nazi supporters and whatnot running this time around for election. What you think about the number of women?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Was that a reaction to El Trumpo?
Yeah. 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 And the thing is that people are beginning to realize, a lot of people, a lot of these people, is that, and you know, I haven't put down two pictures and say, well, this guy did this and this lady, you know, but there's a sense now that women politicians and women who get these jobs now are better to handle these jobs than the men. What do you say?
Well, I think in terms of Democratic women, sure, because they tend to be relatively aware of what's best for the community and what's best for everyone involved,
Okay.
and what's fair and what's right and what's moral. They tend to look at things like the right to access health care and the right to live in an area where you're not prone to gun violence, et cetera, and they try to move on that. You look at some of these Republican women, like the woman down in Tennessee, I forget her name with the blonde hair, or Sarah Honey Boo Boo, the press secretary, or any number of them on the right. They're just paid off and immoral and illegitimate. But when you start looking at people who have a viewpoint of what's good for us all and what would make us move from this position to this position, that position, in other words, progress and be progressive, it tends to be women, and I think it's a good thing. Because again, I go back to what I always say. I believe in the African spiritual system model. It takes the masculine and the feminine to create the whole.
Yeah.
And anytime you read somebody say that God's a he and he told me this, or a man knows better and the man needs to leave and the woman needs to walk in his footsteps and support the man, you know, they're just misogynistic, and they learned it from the Europeans who came to the Nile Valley and stole our precepts to create these religions, and they made them misogynistic in their image.
You were saying,
One
Patrick.
final question.
You were saying.
One final question. I have it in a question. What would you like to see in the November coming election? Are you looking for a complete, what they say, blue wave?
That's what I'm looking for.
I am. You know, and I'm. You know, I know they're talking about now. It's going to be close in some of these places, but that's what I'm looking for.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to?
Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you are too arrogant. If you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power. And I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that I'm God.